Hanakim's fingers trembled slightly as she reached into her locker on level 47 of Galactic Academy Station Omega-7. The massive space station rotated slowly in the void, its artificial gravity generators humming beneath the polished metal floors. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see 3 different suns casting rainbow light across the station's outer hull. The corridor buzzed with activity as students from dozens of species hurried between classes. Tall, crystalline beings from the Quartz Nebula chimed musical notes to each other while floating jellyfish-like creatures from Aquarius Prime glided through specialized water-filled tubes that ran along the ceiling. Robot servants wheeled past carrying data tablets and refreshment containers, their optical sensors scanning for students who needed assistance. But Hannah felt alone among them all. She was one of only 5 humans in a student body of 12,000. Earth had joined the Galactic Federation just 15 years ago, making humans the newest and least respected members of the galactic community. Most species had been traveling between stars for thousands of years while humans had barely. Figured out faster than light travel, the null dampener felt heavy in her hand. Every human was required to wear the small silver device attached to their temple. According to galactic law, human brains were too chaotic and unpredictable, potentially dangerous to other species. The dampener supposedly kept their primitive thought patterns under control. Hannah had worn hers for 8 months since arriving at the academy. Sometimes she wondered what it would feel like to think without it. But removing a neural dampener without permission was a serious crime that could get her expelled and sent back to Earth in disgrace. Well, what do we have here? The voice made her stomach drop. Velter's reflection appeared in her locker's mirror, his blue skin shimmering with the bioluminescent patterns that showed his mood. Right now, those patterns pulsed with cruel amusement. At nearly 8 feet tall, he towered over most other students, his species having evolved on a low-gravity world that made them naturally tall and lean. Behind him stood his usual crew. Crixel, whose tentacle-like arms could extend to twice their normal length. Zothim, covered in armor-like scales that could deflect energy weapons. Nexara, whose 4 eyes could see across multiple light spectrums. And Velter's younger cousin, eager to prove himself to the group. They were all Zephyrians, the most powerful species in this sector of the galaxy. Their homeworld controlled the largest fleet of battle cruisers, and their technology was centuries ahead of most other races. Velter's father sat on the High Galactic Council, making the young Zephyrian essentially untouchable. There's our favorite. Little primitive, Velter continued, his voice carrying easily over the noise of the corridor. Several other students stopped to watch, forming a loose circle around them. Still pretending you belong here, with real galactic citizens, Hannah closed her locker carefully and turned to face them. She had learned that running only made things worse. I'm just trying to get to class. Velter, trying to get to class, he repeated in a mocking tone, his bioluminescent patches shifting to bright orange with amusement. Did you hear that? The human thinks it can learn advanced quantum mechanics when its species was still throwing rocks at each other a few centuries ago. Laughter rippled through the watching crowd. A group of insectoid students clicked their mandibles in what passed for hive-mind humor, while some gaseous beings from the nebula colonies sparked with electrical amusement. For 3 months, this had been Hannah's daily reality. The harassment had started small with name-calling and exclusion from study groups. Then it escalated to sabotaging her homework assignments and spreading rumors that humans carried dangerous diseases. Last week, they had reprogrammed her rooms, environmental controls to randomly blast her with freezing air while she slept. But today felt different. There was something in Velter's posture, the way his friends had positioned themselves, that made Hannah's human instincts scream danger, even with the neural dampener suppressing her natural awareness. She could sense that whatever came next would be worse than everything before. "You know what I think?" Velda stepped closer, his shadow falling across her. "I think it's time someone taught you exactly where humans rank in the galactic hierarchy. Bathroom, now." His bioluminescent patches flashed bright red, the Zephyrian, equivalent of baring teeth. The other students began backing away, sensing that whatever was about to happen. They didn't want to be witnesses. Hannah's heart pounded as she looked round for help. A security drone floated nearby, but it was focused on monitoring for weapons. Not verbal confrontations. The few faculty members in sight were busy with their own tasks. And most other species preferred not to get involved in what they saw as primitive human problems. She was alone. Just like always, the bathroom's automatic doors slid shut behind them with a soft hiss, sealing Hannah inside with her 5 tormentors. The space was larger than most Earth bathrooms, designed to accommodate the various alien species that attended the academy. Floating wash basins adjusted their height automatically, while the walls displayed calming holographic images of peaceful worlds from across the galaxy. But there was nothing peaceful about this moment. Velda's bioluminescent patches had shifted to deep crimson, pulsing like a heartbeat. In Zephyrian culture, this color meant dominance and aggression. His 4 companions spread out in a practiced formation, blocking every possible escape route. They had done this before to other students. "You know what the problem is with humans," Velda said, his voice echoing off the metallic walls. "You think you're special just because you managed to stumble into space travel. But look at you now, alone, helpless, exactly where your species belongs." Crixel's tentacle arms began extending, reaching nearly to the ceiling as he prepared to grab Hannah if she tried to run. His skin had turned a threatening shade of purple. "My species was building star cruisers when yours was still discovering fire," he hissed through his breathing slits. Zarthemes' armored scales clicked as they shifted position, each one capable of deflecting energy blasts from military-grade weapons. Humans are so weak. No natural armor, no enhanced sensors, no special abilities. Just soft pink flesh that breaks easily. Nexar's 4 eyes rotated independently, each one focusing on Hannah from a different angle. Her species could see heat signatures, electromagnetic fields, and even detect fear pheromones. "I can smell your terror, human. Your primitive brain knows it's outmatched." Veltum, the youngest of the group, flexed his razor-sharp claws. "Maybe after today, the other humans will learn to stay in their quarters where they belong." The environmental control panel behind Hannah displayed the bathroom's current settings in multiple alien lang. Uses, temperature, humidity, air pressure, sonic frequencies for cleaning cycles, electromagnetic field strength for the antimicrobial systems, all controlled by advanced alien technology that humans had barely begun to understand. Or so the aliens thought. Hannah looked at each of her tormentors in turn. 8 months of suppressed frustration and anger bubbled beneath the surface. 8 months of being treated like a lesser being. 8 months of having her natural human capabilities locked away behind a device that these aliens had convinced the galaxy was necessary for everyone saw. Fetty. Last chance. Primitive. Velda stepped forward, his shadow falling across her like a dark blanket. "Kneel down and apologize for thinking you could ever be equal to real galactic citizens. Maybe then we'll only break one of your arms, instead of dropping to her knees." Hannah slowly raised her hand to the neural dampener attached to her temple. The small silver device hummed with energy, its quantum processors working constantly to suppress the very thoughts that made humans unique among galactic species. "What are you doing?" Velda asked, confusion replacing the aggression in his voice. Hannah's fingers found the deactivation switch, such a small thing. A tiny button that no human was supposed to press without official permission. Breaking this rule could mean expulsion, imprisonment, or being banned from ever leaving Earth again. But as she looked at the 5 alien bullies surrounding her, Hannah realized something important. They weren't afraid of humans because humans were weak. They were afraid of humans because of what humans might become if they were ever allowed to reach their full potential. With a soft click, she pressed the button, the neural dampener powered, down with a subtle electronic whine, its lights fading from blue to black. The constant pressure that had been squeezing her thoughts for 8 months suddenly lifted. Like taking off a tight helmet after wearing it all day. The Zephyans burst into laughter. "What's that supposed to do, primitive?" Velta mocked, his patches flushing bright orange with amusement. "Make you think harder. Newsflash, human. Thinking isn't going to save you now. Maybe the little primitive thinks she's going to outsmart. U.S. Crixel added, his tentacles waving in what passed for a Zephyrian humor. But something was already changing in Hannah's eyes. The dull, suppressed look that had been there for months was fading, replaced by something sharp and focused. Her posture straightened as neural pathways that had been artificially dampened began firing at full capacity. "You have no idea what you've just allowed me to become," she said quietly, her voice carrying a nuance that made Nexar's heat-sensing eyes narrow with confusion, for the first time in 8 months. Hannah's mind operated without restrictions. Pattern recognition systems that had evolved over millions of years of human survival kicked into high gear. Tactical awareness that had carried her species from hiding in caves to building starships flooded. Through her consciousness, the bathroom wasn't just a room anymore. It was a complex system of interconnected technologies, each one with specific functions and vulnerabilities. The environmental controls weren't just buttons and displays. They were tools waiting to be used by someone who understood how to manipulate them. And humans, Hannah realized with growing confidence, were very good at using tools. The moment Hannah's neural dampener shut down, her perception of the bathroom transformed completely. What had seemed like a simple room seconds before now revealed itself as a complex network of interconnected systems, each one broadcasting its function and vulnerabilities directly to her newly unleashed human consciousness. The water pressure regulators hummed at exactly 2.7 gigahertz. The sonic cleaning cycles in the hand dryers operated on a frequency range that would be painful to most alien species. The electromagnetic antimicrobial field generators could be overloaded to create disorienting light patterns. Even the structural support beams in the ceiling had stress points that could be exploited. Everything became a potential weapon in the hands of a species that had spent millions of years learning to sue. Revive on a world that constantly tried to kill them. "You know what's interesting about your species, Velta?" Hannah said conversationally, her fingers dancing across the environmental control panel with newfound understanding. The alien text that had seemed confusing before now made perfect sense, her pattern recognition systems automatically translating the logical sequences. Velta's bioluminescent patches flickered with confusion. "What are you babbling about?" "Primitive Zephyr Prime," Hannah continued, adjusting the water temperature controls while appearing to simply lean against the wall. "Beautiful world. 3 gentle suns. Gravity so low you barely need muscles to move around. No dangerous weather patterns. No predators. Larger than your hand." She pressed a sequence of buttons that began routing superheated water through the cleaning systems. Steam started to rise from the wash basins, but so gradually that the aliens didn't notice at first. "Your people evolved in paradise," she explained, her enhanced cognition processing dozens of environmental factors simultaneously. No competition for resources. No need to develop survival instincts. No pressure to become tactical thinkers. Crixel's tentacles began twitching as the humidity in the room increased. His species came from a dry desert world, and his breathing slits were already starting to struggle with the moisture. "What's happening to the air?" "Earth was different," Hannah said. "Now activating the sonic cleaning systems in a careful sequence. Predators everywhere, ice ages, volcanic eruptions, earthquakes, hurricanes, plagues, asteroid impacts. For millions of years, only the smartest humans survived long enough to have children." Steam began filling the room as the superheated water created a disorienting fog. The Zephyrians' large, sensitive eyes immediately began watering. Their vision, adapted for the gentle light of their home suns, couldn't handle the sudden change. "Invisibility. I can't see," Veltum gasped, his claws scraping against the walls as he tried to find his bearings. Hannah had already moved to a new position, her human hearing able to track each alien's location by their breathing patterns and heartbeats. Meanwhile, she activated the first-hand dryer, its sonic frequency joining with the second one to create a harmonic resonance. "The thing about humans," she continued, her voice seeming to come from everywhere at once in the echoing, steam-filled space, "is that we don't just think. We think tactically. Every problem is a puzzle to solve. Every environment is a system to understand and manipulate." The harmonic frequency from the dryers hit exactly the right pitch to exploit the Zephyrians. Sensitive hearing, their auditory organs, evolved to detect the subtle musical communications of their species, were overwhelmed by the precise acoustic assault. Zothim dropped to his knees, his armored scales clattering against the floor as he clutched his head. "Make it stop." Nexar's eyes were spinning wildly, unable to focus through the steam while the sonic frequencies disrupted her balance organs. How is she doing this? But Hannah wasn't finished. Her pattern recognition had identified something else: the electromagnetic field generators that kept the bathroom sterile. By overloading them in sequence, she could create strobing lights that would completely disorient anyone who wasn't expecting them. Humans survived the saber-toothed cats by being smarter, not stronger, she said, adjusting the electromagnetic controls with surgical precision. "We survived the ice ages by outthinking the cold. We survived plagues by understanding patterns that other species couldn't see." Brilliant flashes of light began strobing through the steam as the overloaded field generators sparked and flickered. The combination of visual chaos, acoustic assault, and respiratory distress was too much for the aliens' nervous systems to handle. Velta stumbled backward, his bioluminescent patches flashing randomly as his body's automatic responses went haywire. "This isn't possible. You're just a primitive. We reached the stars not because we were the strongest or the fastest," Hannah continued, now moving through the chaos with perfect confidence while her tormentors flailed helplessly. "We reached the stars because we learned to turn every environment into our ally." Crixel's tentacles were wrapped round his head, trying to block out the sonic frequencies, but the sound was coming from multiple sources now. His natural camouflage abilities were malfunctioning, making his skin flash through different colors uncontrollably. The final piece of Hannah's improvised plan activated as she triggered the emergency ventilation system. The sudden change in air pressure, combined with everything else, was the last straw for the aliens' overwhelmed senses. Within 5 minutes of the null dampener being deactivated, all 5 bullies were on the floor, completely incapacitated by environmental manipulation. They couldn't comprehend, let alone counter. They riffed on the smooth metal floor, their enhanced sensors that had seemed so superior now working against them. Hannah stood calmly in the center of the chaos, the steam parting round her like she was the eye of a technological hurricane. For the first time in 8 months, she smiled with genuine confidence. "Welcome to what humans call tactical thinking," she said quietly, the moment Hannah's null dampener deactivated. Sensors throughout Galactic Academy Station Omega-7 began flashing, warning signals deep in the station's central core. The primary AI monitoring system designated AEG-IS-7 registered the unauthorized removal of a mandatory safety device and immediately classified it as a potential SEC. UOT threat. Alarms chime softly in the security center where Commander Dakshin, a six-armed hexapod officer, was reviewing the day's incident reports. His compound eyes shifted to focus on the new alert appearing on his holographic display. Neural dampener deactivation in Section 7G. He announced to his team of robotic security drones hovering nearby, probability of human mental breakdown 67%. Calculated Aegis -7 in its synthetic voice, dispatching emergency response team. But as the security feeds from the bathroom began streaming to the command center, Commander Dakshin's six arms froze mid-motion. What he was seeing defied everything the galactic community believed about human capabilities. 3 decks above in the faculty lounge, Dean Murdoch was enjoying his midday meal of crystallized nutrients when his communication implant buzzed urgently. The tall, ethereal Altarian had dedicated his life to education, believing that knowledge could bridge the gaps between species. His translucent skin shimmered with concern as he received the priority alert. "Sir, you need to see this immediately," came the voice of his assistant, Professor Kylandra, a floating gas-based entity from the nebula colonies. Dean Murdoch's elongated fingers manipulated his personal viewing device, connecting to the security feed just as Hannah began her systematic dismantling of the Zephyrian bullies. His large, multifaceted eyes widened as he watched the human student calmly turn the bathroom's own systems against the tormentors. "By the ancient stars," he whispered, his bioluminescent throat sac pulsing with amazement. "She's not fighting them. She's conducting them like a symphony." Other faculty members began gathering round Dean Murdoch's viewing screen as word spread through the Academy's internal network. Professor Rexidol, a massive insectoid from the Hive worlds, clicked his mandibles in what passed for his species expression of surprise. The human demonstrates tactical reasoning beyond any recorded baseline. Dr. Vation, whose crystalline body resonated with harmonic frequencies when excited, began shimming like wind bells. "Look at her pattern recognition algorithms. She's processing environmental data faster than our own students can think." Meanwhile, in dormitories across the station, alien students were clustering round public viewing screens as bootleg copies of the security footage began circulating through unofficial networks. A group of young Aquarians floating in their specialized water pods watched through their transparent habitat walls, their tentacles curling with nervous energy. "Is that really the same human who sits quietly in quantum mechanics class?" bubbled one of them through their translation device. In the crystalline sector, students whose bodies were made of living mineral watched the footage with growing amazement. Their species communicated through light patterns that flashed across their surfaces, and right now those patterns were showing pure disbelief. The soft skin is using environmental manipulation like a master engineer. One of them pulsed to his companions. "We assumed they were intellectually inferior because of their organic brains." The footage was spreading beyond the Academy now, transmitted through subspace communication networks that connected thousands of worlds across the galaxy, on the mining stations of Kepler 442. Robot workers paused their drilling operations to observe the humans' tactical display on their optical sensors in the floating cities of Aquarius Prime. Amphibious beings gathered in their council chambers to analyze what they were seeing. By the time the bathroom incident concluded, alerts were reaching the highest levels of galactic government. In the gleaming spire of the Galactic Council building on Centauri Prime, emergency sessions were being called as representatives from dozens of species tried to understand what they had witnessed. Councillor Velkar, Velta S. father and one of the most influential Zephyrians in the galaxy, received the footage while presiding over a routine trade dispute between two minor worlds. His bioluminescent patches dimmed to almost black as he watched his son and four other students completely outmaneuvered by a single human using nothing but intelligence and environmental awareness. "Pause all current proceedings," he announced to the assembled council, his voice carrying across the vast chamber. "We have a situation that requires immediate attention." The footage was transmitted to the screens surrounding the council chamber, visible to representatives from over 200 species, gasps, clicks, harmonic resonances, and various other expressions of shock filled the air as they watched Hannah's demonstration. "How long have we been suppressing this?" asked Councillor Rithenal, the floating energy being whose form flickered with emotional static. "If one human can demonstrate such capabilities, what have we been preventing?" Back at the Academy, Dean Murdoch was already composing urgent messages to the Galactic Education Council. His fingers moved rapidly across his holographic keyboard as he dictated his observations. "Alert the Galactic Education Council immediately," he instructed his assistant. "They need to understand that our entire assessment of human cognitive capacity may have been fundamentally flawed." Professor Calandra S. Gassisform swirled with concern. "Sir, if humans are capable of this level of tactical thinking, the implications for galactic society are enormous." "Exactly," Dean Murdoch replied, his throat sac pulsing with the bioluminescent patterns that indicated deep thought among his species. "We may have been handicapping the very minds that could help solve our greatest challenges." The Academy's communication rays were now buzzing with activity as requests for the footage poured in from academic institutions across known space. Military analysts wanted to study the tactical implications. Xenobiologists demanded access to conduct new cognitive assessments. Even the mysterious void dwellers, who rarely communicated with other species, sent encrypted messages requesting copies of the data. What had started as a simple case of bullying had become a galactic revelation that would reshape how every species viewed humanity's place in the cosmic community. Within 72 hours of the incident, the footage had been transmitted to every major world in the galaxy. What happened in that bathroom was no longer just Academy gossip. It had become the most analyzed piece of educational data in galactic history. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened on Centauri Prime, the massive space station that served as the political heart of their civilization. Representatives from over 300 species gathered in the Great Crystalline Dome, their various forms creating a spectacular display of galactic diversity. Floating gas beings swirled near the ceiling while rock-based life forms anchored themselves to the floor. Insectoid delegates clicked and chirped, while aquatic species observed from their specialized water chambers. At the center of it all stood Councillor Velkar, his blue skin pale with shame as he addressed the assembly. His bioluminescent patches flickered with the deep purple that indicated remorse among his people. "Fellow council members," his voice carried across the vast chamber through universal translators, "we have made a grave error. For 15 years, we have been suppressing the very capabilities that could revolutionize our civilization." The massive viewing screens round the dome displayed Hannah's tactical demonstration on continuous loop. Each time it played, new murmurs of amazement rippled through the diverse audience. "My own son was among those who underestimated human potential," Velkar continued, his voice heavy with regret. "We classified them as primitive because they were new to space travel. We forced them to wear neural dampeners because we feared their chaotic thinking. But what we called chaos was actually advanced pattern recognition that our peaceful species never developed." Dr. Hexus, a renowned xenobiologist whose crystalline body chimed with excitement, presented her emergency analysis to the council. "The human brain shows adaptation patterns consistent with extreme survival pressure. They didn't evolve in our comfortable worlds. They evolved in what can only be described as a hostile environment that demanded constant tactical thinking. The vote was unanimous. Neural dampeners would become optional for all human students immediately. Back at Galactic Academy Station Omega-7, the changes were dramatic and swift. Dean Murdoch personally escorted Hannah to her first neural dampener-free classes, curious to observe how human students performed without artificial restrictions in advanced physics. Professor Sandra was astonished when Hannah began solving quantum equations using methods that didn't exist in any textbook. She's approaching the problems from completely different angles, the professor reported to the academic council. It's like watching someone paint with colors we never knew existed, but the most significant change came when the Academy's student council announced they would accept their first human representative. The vote wasn't even close. Hannah won by the largest margin in Academy history, supported by students from dozens of species who had witnessed her demonstration. Maybe it's time we learned from each other instead of ranking each other, said Crixton, a young Aquarian whose tentacles glowed with approval as she cast her vote. The transformation of Velta and his friends became one of the most talked about aspects of the entire incident. The 5 former bullies had been so thoroughly humbled by their experience that they volunteered to become Earth's first alien human cultural exchange ambassadors. I spent my whole life thinking technology made us superior, Velta admitted during a public broadcast that reached billions of viewers across the galaxy. But Hannah showed me that intelligence isn't about having the best gadgets. It's about knowing how to use whatever you have available. His cousin Velta nodded in agreement, his claws carefully folded in a gesture of respect. Humans call it making do with what you've got. We have a lot to learn from that philosophy. The most revolutionary change came when the Academy announced new courses that had never existed in galactic education before. Survival logic and environmental tactics were taught by human instructors who had volunteered to leave Earth and share their knowledge with alien students. Commander Riley Park, a former Earth military strategist, found herself teaching a classroom full of beings who had never faced a predator in their lives. Today, we're going to learn about resource management under pressure, she announced to her mixed class of crystalline, gaseous, and aquatic students on Earth. We call this making every bullet count. The course became so popular that students from other academies began requesting transfers just to attend. Within months, similar programs were being established on dozens of worlds across the galaxy. Meanwhile, Hannah's academic performance without the neural dampener was breaking records. She graduated not just with highest honors, but with achievements that redefined what those honors meant. Her final project, a complete redesign of the Academy's emergency response systems using environmental manipulation techniques, was immediately adopted by space stations throughout the galaxy. The day of her graduation, representatives from every major world attended the ceremony. As Hannah walked across the stage in her academic robes, the applause came in hundreds of different forms: harmonic chimes, bioluminescent flashes, electromagnetic pulses, and traditional clapping that echoed through the Great Hall. 6 months later, she stood before the Galactic Council as Earth's youngest ambassador, her neural dampener displayed in a place of honor on her desk as a reminder of how far they had all come. Sometimes, she said in her first address to the Assembly, the greatest strength comes from the challenges that forge you. Earth didn't make humans weak by being dangerous. It made us creative, adaptable, and resourceful. Those aren't primitive traits. They're exactly what this galaxy needs as we face new challenges together. The standing ovation lasted for 27 minutes. Delivered by beings who had finally learned that intelligence comes in many forms, and that sometimes the newest voice in the room has the most important things to say. The end.